All right, let's go into it. Today's topic is, are you sick of clients going out of bounds? What are some examples of clients going out of bounds? For me, clients going out of bounds means asking for things outside of the scope of a project. Unwieldy clients in projects, asking for more than they're supposed to, or halfway through a project asking for things. Clients expecting things that are unfair to expect. Expecting you to respond to things on the weekends. That's something that's out of bounds for me. It's not necessarily out of bounds for everyone, but that is a good example for me of something that feels like they're encroaching on my personal space. Undecisive, too many revisions, using a sweet voice and charm. Decisiveness is a killer for me because I'm a very decisive person. It's a trigger. There are so many ways that clients can go out of bounds and they can really suck us of our energy. Scope creep is a perfect example. When I think of boundaries though, and tell me if you agree, I usually think of them in terms of relationships, with personal relationships. Let's say you think about putting boundaries in with your family or friends, right? People who ask for things that you don't necessarily feel like you want to provide. Putting boundaries in with family members who might be asking too much. That's the association I have anyway. I don't usually think of boundaries in terms of business, or that's not the association it gives me. But I have found, and I've worked with so many people who don't think of boundaries in their business at all. They completely don't even think that there's a place for them. And I think that the reason people avoid work boundaries is because they're scary. They feel, if I put boundaries in, boundaries, first of all, sounds like I'm going to tell somebody, no, they can't have this thing. No, they can't do this thing. This is where I draw the line. And that, I think, goes very hand in hand with feeling like they're not going to like you. So this is a big issue I see a lot of people have. Oh, but if I tell them no for this thing, they're not going to like me. I want to please them. They're my clients. I want them to be happy. So if I say no, or I say this is where I draw the line, I'm creating animosity. I'm creating a negative interaction. But what does it look like to have great boundaries in your business? I'm going to take some responsibility for this because I talk a lot about saying no, and I'm really aggressive. I've gotten a few more of these. This is what sparked this whole idea. I got a few emails where people are proudly telling me how boundary they were being. They weren't using those words, but they're like, Pia, I told this client, no, you can't have that. or I said no. This very aggressive feeling. And I get why they're telling me that, because I'm very aggressive about this concept of saying no to things that you don't want to do and all of that. But I don't think of putting boundaries in your business as being aggressive with clients and telling them, no, you can't have that. No, this is where I draw the line. Not at all. I think actually if you have really strong boundaries, it means that you're not being requested. Those things are not being requested of you. So when I put really good boundaries into my business and really understood what boundaries were, I no longer had to say no in that aggressive way that we're all thinking of, even in a nice way. To me, it's not really about saying no. Being in a position where you have to tell a client no already means that you've gotten pretty far down the line and that your boundaries haven't been clear from the beginning. So actually, I used to be really bad with boundaries, and then I was constantly in this weakened position where they were asking me for all this stuff or texting me on Saturday night, I hear you. And then I would have to decide that I either don't answer them, or that I tell them I can't, or that I do answer them. And the same thing with scope creep or people asking for stuff outside of a contract. I would be in a position where I would get this nervous thing. Oh, they want this one more revision. It's not included in the contract. I feel awkward charging them for it. They need it. They want it. Round and round in circles. I have since learned that if you have proper boundaries in place, they rarely, if ever, even ask for those things. So what does it look like to have really good boundaries? I think first, it's about internalizing that there isn't a fear of what if they don't like me. Actually, when you have really good boundaries, you're not going to be in a position where you're going to have to be mean or say something mean where they don't like you. So this fear, I think the position that one can be in where they are reacting to something and then are worried that reaction is going to make clients not like them, that's actually because they haven't had boundaries up until that point. It's a result of not having boundaries. It's not a situation where, oh, see, I have clear boundaries because I refuse to do this. I think that another thing that helped me build boundaries was realizing that I don't have to do anything. This is a big one. I think a lot of people, myself included, have been in positions where it's like you get asked for something that you don't actually have to do, but you feel like you have to do it. And then you get in this really uncomfortable position where it's like, oh, I feel like I owe it to them to do this thing or that thing. That's another situation that you can end up in because you didn't have clear boundaries from the beginning. Let me give you an example. Someone I am coaching in my mastermind said a few years after working with a client, so a client came back a couple years later and her website needed some sort of update because technology updates, right? And so she came to her and said, my website's out of date now because of X, Y, and Z. The platform changed. So this business owner says, I don't know what to do right now because I don't really know what it's going to take. I really don't want to do it, but I feel like I have to because I built that website and now I want to keep this person happy. I totally understand that. It's like taking a lot of responsibility for your clients, which I respect and appreciate because I take full responsibility for my clients too. That said, I said to them, what do you really want to do here? Do you want to help figure out how to fix this website? Is that something you want to do? They're a designer. The technical part of the website is not their interest. And they said, not really. I don't really want to do this. This is a pain in the butt. I don't even know how long this is going to take. This could open a can of worms. I said, so you don't have to. This is your business. Now, it doesn't mean saying, no, I don't owe you that, which I think a lot of people think boundaries are like that. No, I don't have a guarantee on your website, so I don't owe this to you. Realize that you're in a position to do whatever you want, but also be helpful to the client. So just look for a solution for them. That's not something that I can help you with, but I'd like to introduce you to a web developer who can make the connection and let them figure it out. The point is you can be very helpful and genuinely helpful without having to do things that you don't want to do or that you aren't expected to do. That's just one example of putting really good boundaries in. Another thing that has helped me tremendously with my business boundaries is getting clear from the beginning on what kind of relationship I want to have with people in business. I channel one of my mentors when I think about this. So I have a mentor who has multiple multi-million-dollar businesses that she built from scratch on her own. She is so freaking awesome. And I would never, ever expect to hear back from her on a weekend. I would never expect to get a response from her. I just know that she doesn't respond to emails on the weekend. She's very boundaried about her time and she travels all over the world and she does all these fabulous things. She's so fabulous. But she also runs these awesome businesses and she does it with very clear boundaries around her time. She responded to an email of mine and in the footer it said, I want to let you know I don't have email on my phone anymore, just so you know. So talk about another level of boundaries. She's literally letting you know from the beginning, my email is not on my phone. The world doesn't stop spinning because you don't check your email for 12 hours or however long, but we all feel like it does. And those are places where we can create those boundaries for ourselves. I don't fault her for not putting her email on her phone. I don't fault her for not responding to emails on the weekends. Those are the boundaries she's put in place. And no client or customer is going to come into her world and be annoyed with her for not doing X, Y, and Z. Quite the opposite. Those are her boundaries and we accept them. For me, that really freed me up in tremendous ways because I realized that if you have your boundaries from the beginning, then everybody who comes into your world is going to accept that's how you are. And really, we all already have these boundaries in one way or another. It's who we are. It's how we operate. We just don't usually think about them very thoughtfully. We end up in this knotted up place where we aren't really sure how we want to act or we're doing things we don't really want to do. And all of that actually tells our clients and our customers that they can come into our space in a way that might be unhelpful to both of us. How do you apply that to not working for free? That's a great example. I talk about not doing free work all the time. And this is a perfect example of already having boundaries in place. So at this point, when people email me or request coffee date, can I pick your brain? I already know what my policy is on that, which is basically I have a brand shrink specifically for people who are interested in hearing my advice on their business. My response is very friendly. Oh, I actually have the perfect thing for you. I have this brain shrink. This is what it does. This is how much it costs. I'd love to do that for you if that's what you're interested in. Even not having coffee dates. That's another great example of having boundaries in your life. I just don't do coffee dates. It's like Pia's policy. So when people ask me if I want to come out with them for coffee, I don't really do that. I will have a 15-minute phone call with you if it makes sense. Why don't you tell me more about what you'd like to discuss and then I can direct you in the right place. The point is, it's almost like having policy and procedures for your life and for how you operate in business. To me, that's how you create those boundaries so that you feel good about it and so that you're not being rude or dismissive or disrespectful to other people. When you start from a place of this is how I operate. This is when I respond. This is what you can expect. This is how closely I stick to my process and procedures and all of that. When you start a project from there, a client will fall in line in a great way because they'll also just, oh, this is how I expect to work with this person. So it's a lot about consistency, but you can't have consistency if you aren't really clear on what your boundaries are from the beginning. Another thing, I stopped going to just random events. I just don't go to events anymore. And I asked myself, what would happen if I stopped going to these random events? Absolutely nothing would happen. So I stopped going to them. That's another thing. I'm not really telling anybody that. I'm not dismissive of it, but I just know that these are all a waste of my time. But one of the best ways that I think that you can create boundaries in your business is really having clear process. This is what the badass methodology is all about, right? My badass your business, badass your brand methodology is all about having clear process, offerings, focus. Those are all ways to create boundaries in your business. And when you create that clarity, you free up a ton of time because now you're not heeing and hawing. You're not being dragged around with different requests trying to figure stuff out. You know exactly what you have to offer. You know exactly how it goes. And those are also ways to put boundaries in place. And when you put those boundaries in place, people stop asking you for all these rando stuff. And even if they do ask you for it, you just have a very clear and seamless, easy way to respond to it because you're so clear on what you do and don't do, what you will and won't accept, when you will and won't respond, all of the above. So that's what boundaries mean to me. And the clearer you are on your boundaries from the beginning, the fewer times you'll have to be asked for those things. And I will tell you, the transition for me from not having boundaries at all, I would respond to someone's email in the middle of the night. If I woke up and I saw it, I was like, oh, I'm so great because now they'll wake up to an answer. It's like the opposite of boundary is to do that. Going from that, because if you respond to somebody that quickly or whenever, they're going to start to expect you to do that. And then they're going to be asking you to do stuff like that. And that's a situation that you created. You developed that relationship and those expectations. The opposite of that is being clear on your boundaries and your process and your focus and all of those things from the beginning. And then allowing people to understand that's how you work. And then they'll stop asking you for that stuff. And you can be sweet as can be. You don't have to say no. Everyone, I'm proud of you. Those of you who have emailed me and said, I said no to this and I said no to that. I'm proud of you for doing that. But just know you don't have to be a dick about it. You can be super nice and really genuine and helpful and just still be very boundaried. So that is my top tips for today. Go think about what you can do to be more boundaried in your business. I'd love to hear in the comments any ways that you think you are out of bounds right now and where you can start to create those boundaries for yourself so you can stop getting these annoying requests and it'll free up a lot of your time. And that's what I'm all about.